My jungle will lure you in, with paths that are deceptively apparent and secrets that will never be uncovered. Silver starlight may show you the way, shape-shifting shadows will lead you astray. So open your eyes, I shall show you a world etched deep in my mind and free from your kind. Only the greatest explorers of the unknown, those who are willing to lose themselves, can unravel the enigma. For the essence of the jungle lies not in being found, but in getting lost. Welcome to Thorn's Jungle. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Thorn's Jungle. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, about all the topics we're going to be talking about, one of the topics was cryptozoology. Now, for those that don't know what cryptozoology is, it's classified as a pseudoscience, so it's not technically a sort of acknowledged science, but crypto meaning hidden or secret, and zoology meaning animals. So it's the study of hidden or secret animals, animals that haven't been discovered yet, or you only hear rumor of, and that's about it. So animals like the Loch Ness Monster, Sasquatch, etc., Yeti. I've always approached cryptozoology with a healthy skepticism, because there are some animals out there that are mentioned and you just think, yeah, that ain't happening. But then there are others that, there could be something to. There could be something to this animal. It does sound like it could potentially exist. And I mean, in my opinion, most animals are of cryptozoological nature until they're discovered, So for a good example would be the okapi. It's a relative of the giraffe, and it's a weird looking animal, eh? It's got like zebra patterns on its legs, but it's got sort of the build of a small giraffe. Now, this was only known from rumor and myth for a long time until it was formally discovered by Western science in 1901. So that animal is kind of like the face, the mascot of cryptozoology, because it was a cryptozoological animal until it was formally described by Western science. Same as gorillas. Look at gorillas. White people go to Africa and they hear the locals and the native people talking about this, 500 pound, 220 kilo ape man, half ape, half man, that lives in the jungle. Now, most people are going to go, yeah, right, as if, this is just a legend, this can't be true, until they see them with their own eyes and go, holy shit, that is a big, what looks like a human, but extremely hairy, and that is a gorilla. Sorry, my dogs are barking because they're brain damaged bastards. I knew they would. I knew they would start barking. As soon as I started this episode, I knew they would start barking. Alright, I think they've stopped. Bloody idiots. And there was some moron with a bloody power sword just before. And I knew it, that's what happens. Yep, I'm going to do a podcast. And next minute, this bloody, I can't quite come up with a good analogy, but you know what I mean. Just dickheads. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so animals like the okapi, the gorilla, are all legends and myths until they're formally described by science. Now, is this next animal one of those? And this is an animal that has always intrigued me. I've known about this animal for a long time, or, said to be animal. It is none other than Mokele Mbembe. Fun name to say. Say it. Mokele Mbembe. It is one of the more fantastical animals, but nonetheless does deserve a looking into. It is a said to be sauropod animal which is a long-necked dinosaur. So similar to Apatosaurus, and Brachiosaurus, and things like that, long-necked dinosaurs. And it's said to live in the Congo in Africa, sort of around the swamplands around the Congo region. It's said to be huge, about 40 feet long, between 25 and 40 feet long. So huge for an animal nowadays, but actually quite small considering other sauropods that have existed. Big titanosaurs and Argentinosaurus, which are 100 feet long. So it is a medium to small size sauropod if we are looking at comparisons to other sauropod dinosaurs that have existed 65 million years ago. But the interesting thing about this is it is very hard to imagine that there are large dinosaurs that have survived, and whether or not it is a dinosaur or an actual physical animal, that's what we're going to look into today. Now, as I said, I am approaching this with a healthy skepticism, but also an open-mindedness, because there are lots of witnesses to these animals, and lots of Western scientists have seen these animals, have seen prints. It was first brought. It was brought to everybody's attention, in the news and media back in 1909. Was the first sort of mention of a sauropod-like animal living in Africa. Now, this was by Carl Hagenbeck's. In his autobiography, Beasts and Men, he described accounts, two different accounts from completely different sources, of a half-elephant, half-dragon. Now, this wasn't, and this is interesting, this wasn't described in the Congo. This was described in Rhodesia by completely other tribes. Now, he came to the conclusion that it must have been a brontosaurus-like animal. Now, of course, brontosaurus, we now know, never existed. It was actually Apatosaurus. They actually found both bones and thought they were from different animals, but it turns out it's the same animal, so it's an Apatosaurus. So Brontosaurus is kind of an obsolete name for that sauropod, but nonetheless, back then they didn't know. So that's when it was sort of first brought to the public's attention that, hey, there might be a bloody long-neck dinosaur still living in Africa. And this was described around a lake called, now I'm going to stuff up the pronunciation of this because I'm no good at that. Lake Bangweulu. Lake Bangweulu. That's another fun name. African names are fun to say. Lake Bangweulu. Now, he noticed a lack of hippos in that lake, and the locals told him that there is a creature that kills hippos living in the lake. That's why there is a lack of hippos. Now, if you ever see a hippo, or ever read about a hippo, these are animals not to be fucked with. I know firsthand, don't mess with hippos. They are insane. They kill 500 people a year in Africa. More than... let's compare that to a shark. Sharks kill between 6 and 12 a year. Hippos don't even eat meat, and they're killing 500 people a year. I've been attacked by hippos on a boat, and I can say now it's probably the scariest moment of my life. Like, probably the most in my life that I thought I was going to die, I knew I was going to die. Like, I still have, flashbacks from it. It was really scary. I'll go into that in another episode of my sort of animal attack and all my adventures, but for now we're talking about Mokele Mbembe. Now, the interesting thing, it's mainly described around a lake called Lake Tele. If you look at Lake Tele on Google Earth, it's a really weird lake. It's almost perfectly circular. And it's not a very deep lake. It's only like maybe 5 feet deep. Or, actually a bit more in some places, but averages, it's about 5 foot. It's not that deep. And this animal is said to be sort of semi-aquatic, live in that lake and surrounding tributaries and rivers. So if you look at the Congo Basin, it is basically a swamp the size of Greece. It is huge. Like a swamp the size of a country. It is huge. So it isn't... Oh, those dogs, I swear to God, they'll be extinct soon. It's not hard to believe that there are undiscovered animals in the Congo. There 100% is. And that could range from tiny little insects to sauropod dinosaurs, you know? So, and to think as well, 80% of that has been unexplored. It's unexplored. Hasn't been surveyed for animals. With all the sort of civil unrest in the area, scientists haven't really had a chance to get in there and survey it for new species. So there 100% is new species there. Whether or not it is a dinosaur or not, that remains to be seen. Now, there have been a lot of sort of expeditions. The guy with the buzzsaws just started up again. If he continues, I'm going to go over and give him one upside the head. So there has been a lot of expeditions looking for Mokele Mbembe. Since that 1909 mention, it sparked people's interest. This is when dinosaurs were first sort of becoming popular. It was a little after the fossil wars where people were first discovering new species of dinosaur fossilized. And when people were first sort of starting to come to terms that there were monsters living on this earth well before humans. And there still might be. So these expeditions, now just to clear things up, a lot of them were from New Earth creationists. Now, for a creationist, you catch wind of a still existing dinosaur. That's like, the last piece of the puzzle almost to creationism. They wanted to find this dinosaur and go, hey, your timelines are all wrong. The Earth is only 4,000 years old or whatever they think it is. I'm not too sure. I haven't really researched much of creationism, but they really wanted to find this dinosaur. So there were scientists and there were also creationists looking for this animal. If they could prove that dinosaurs lived alongside man, then they could prove a lot of things with creationism. But there were actual scientists interested in finding this animal as well. And a lot of scientists, they love to show pictures of animals in the area to the natives. And the natives will point and go, yes, that's here, that isn't here. And this has happened on several occasions, on several different expeditions. They will show the natives photos of elephants, photos of giraffes, photos of rhino, photos of hippo, and go point out Mokele Mbembe. Which one is Mokele Mbembe? Now they get to an illustration of a sauropod, a long-necked dinosaur, and the locals will point at it and go, Mokele Mbembe, Mokele Mbembe, that's it. So this is really interesting because these are people that live in this jungle and they know the animals very well. So that's a very interesting, conclusion that they come to, that it's the long-necked dinosaur rather than the obvious. Because Mokele Mbembe is described as having thick skin, much like an elephant or a rhino, sort of brown in coloration to grey, but built like an elephant torso-wise, but has a long, powerful tail and a long neck with an almost reptilian head. Now, that doesn't sound like any animal that still exists, So it is quite interesting. Now, Mokele Mbembe, there are, 100 tribes that live in that area, maybe more, and they all have different dialects and different languages, yet they all have a name for this animal. Long neck, powerful tail. The most common name is Mokele Mbembe, and that's the most commonly used name, but there are dozens of other names for it. And that's interesting as well, that there is a crossover in the name of this animal. in different tribes, which means that these tribes have seen this animal or stories of this animal have been passed down. And that is like, that's a pretty big deal, considering a lot of tribes don't get along. So it's not like they're all sitting around a campfire exchanging stories. These have all, you know, come together on each tribe's, you know, what they've seen and what they've heard. So that is quite interesting. Now look, I'm not going to tell you the names of the people that were on the expeditions and stuff like that, because frankly, I don't remember. I don't take notes. I don't sit there reading facts from, Wikipedia or nothing. This is what I have learned and researched in the past because it has interested me. But I think in 1990, in the 90s, let's just say the 90s, that will save me potentially getting my dates mixed up. But in the 90s, there was a Japanese film crew that went out in search of Mokele Mbembe, and they filmed something in Lake Tele. It was crossing the water. Now, you can't see much because, cryptozoological animals have a habit of when you go to film them or take a photo, the camera instantly becomes out of focus and shaky. That's a power they have, apparently. That's the law of cryptozoology. When you go and try to take a photo of it, there's a convenient shrub in the way, or it's out of focus, or the lens cap was on, or something like that. It seems to be a ongoing theme with cryptozoology. Now, don't get me wrong, like when you see an animal and you're not expecting to see it, it is quite hard to pull out a camera and take a photo of it, but come on. Yeah. Anyway, this thing they filmed, it almost looked like the wake of a boat crossing the lake. And that's very much what it could have been. But they don't really have power boats on this lake. They do have canoes. It was moving fast. Faster than you would imagine a canoe going. Some people said it might have been an elephant crossing the river with its trunk out of the water. But to be honest, like I've looked at this footage a lot of times, and you can't really even see a neck or anything. So I don't know why they would come to that conclusion. It does look like there is a disturbance on the water, and it is something big crossing that water, which is interesting. It is interesting that they did manage to capture something on camera. It's the first and only time that a potential Mokele Mbembe has been caught on camera. So it is pretty cool, pretty interesting. Good on them. There has been footprints found. Mokele Mbembe said to have 3 clawed toes that are about 3 foot in diameter. And there has been expeditions where they have been camping near some of the waterways leading to Lake Tele, and they've heard unusual groans or sounds from an animal that they can't really attribute it to, and then a big crash into the water. And Mokele Mbembe is said to be a herbivore, which all sauropods were. And what's interesting is some of the locals actually know what it eats. So its diet is said to be entirely vegetable, and they eat this. I guess it's a fruit from it's called a liana, which has big white blossoms and like a fruit that resembles a small apple, and it's said to be their favorite food. And there has actually been witnesses that have seen large chunks of vegetation missing from at least 15 to 20 feet up these trees, which sort of suggests that something has been eating them from up there. Now, whether or not that is other local wildlife like monkeys, they do like fruit, or the Mokele Mbembe. But being a herbivore doesn't eat meat, it is still highly aggressive, apparently. Just like hippos. Hippos don't eat meat, yet they will go out of their way to kill you if you get close enough or get within their territory, they will completely disable you, so you're not a threat. And I mean, even large crocodiles will avoid hippos. There are exceptionally large crocodiles, like Gustav. If you don't know who Gustav is, the crocodile, have a look into him. He is a gigantic crocodile that lives in the what is it? Burundi National Park, I think it is. And he's said to have killed over like 150, 300 people and eaten them. And he's said to be between 6 and 7 meters, and he's one of the only reported crocodiles that actually kills hippos or young hippos, which is absolutely crazy. But this Mokele Mbembe is said to attack boats as well. And the name Mokele Mbembe actually means he who stops the flow of the river or the water. He who blocks the flow of the river. So we're talking about an immense animal here. If you block the flow of a river, you're a big boy. So what do I think the Mokele Mbembe is? Do I think it's a dinosaur? I mean, Africa as a continent is one of the only continents that has changed and moved very little from dinosaur times, from prehistoric times. So they reckon that the climate, the temperature hasn't fluctuated as much as other continents. Obviously the continents weren't the same continents we have today. There were supercontinents and they were shifting and they were changing. But that area, which we call Africa now, has remained the least changed out of all the continents. But do I think there is a dinosaur living in the Congo? I don't think it's a dinosaur. I think there's something to it, but I don't think it's a dinosaur. Now, to quote Dr. Alan Grant, dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago. What's left of them is fossilized in the rock, and it's in that rock that real scientists make real discoveries. Now, what John Hammond and InGen did at Jurassic Park is create nothing but genetically engineered theme park monsters. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, the end of that quote doesn't really apply, but I believe dinosaurs existed 65 million years ago, and what's left of them is fossilized. There are direct lineages from theropod dinosaurs and things like that, and they are birds, our avians. There are animals that still exist now that existed before the dinosaurs, like sharks. They've been around for, 400 million years, virtually unchanged. But is a Mokele Mbembe a surviving dinosaur? It's very unlikely. I believe it is of mammalian nature. If it is going to be an animal, it's going to be of mammalian nature. And there are animals that lived in megafauna times that had long necks. Paraceratherium. It was huge. It would dwarf a African bush elephant, which is the largest subspecies of elephant. It is the largest mammal that walks the earth today. And this thing dwarfed it. There were a lot of strange animals floating around back in the Pleistocene and ages like that. So this could be an undescribed mammalian with a long neck and more powerful tail. And I'm not saying that is it. I'm saying if it was going to be that or a dinosaur, I'm going to go with that. Because dinosaurs, even if they evolved and stayed where they were, they still wouldn't be called dinosaurs. Because dinosaurs are a group of animals that no longer exist. If one of them exists, one species exists, you would need many individuals, and you'd also see recent relatives and ancestors along the way. What did they evolve from? They didn't just stay the same. Like the sharks and that. There would have to be recent fossils and recent bones that aren't fossilized, that are discovered. Otherwise, it's just, they don't die? But I do think there is something to Mokele Mbembe, and there is the sort of possibility that it isn't a physical animal, it's a spirit animal. And this is something that is well documented in indigenous tribes. It could be a spirit, or what they believe is a spirit of the jungle. Now, it is very hard for people when they interview and ask questions to indigenous tribes. It's very hard to distinguish whether or not they're talking about a physical animal or a spiritual being, because to them, it's all the same thing. It exists. If it exists in their mind or in their folklore and legend, it exists to them. Westerners, we're a lot more absolute with it. Either it exists or it doesn't. If it's spiritual and it's spiritual energy, it doesn't exist. In Western science, that's sort of our look on it. But to them, it does. So when they're describing this creature to people, it may not be a physical animal. It is a spirit, or some sort of ghost that lives in the forest. So that is a hard distinguishing factor with Mokele Mbembe, and it is a big factor in the legend of Mokele Mbembe. Now, a lot of people have sort of discounted the existence of Mokele Mbembe in being a stunt by creationists to sort of push their ideals onto people. It's also said to be a spirit. It's also said to be sort of like hyped up in people when this dinosaur craze first started, because the legends of Mokele Mbembe did become popular around the same time that the dinosaur craze was sort of happening. So, in the early 20th century. So looking at all that, it's kind of like you can see why this animal can't exist, but I don't know. I don't think 1,000 natives could be wrong, and they all do describe it. Most of them do describe it as a physical being. So I think if it does exist, it is an undescribed large mammal. It is something that I honestly would love to go to the Congo and look into it, because it's one of those things where you can't really take anecdotal evidence into account. I mean, no matter how reliable a witness is, it's of no scientific value. So you're going to need DNA, you're going to need scat, and an actual scientific expedition went out looking for Mokele Mbembe, and they did find a new species. It was a new species of algae in Lake Tele. So, at least they contributed to the, body of science in that expedition. They did find something new. It wasn't a sauropod. But look, I'll tell you something as well. Mokele Mbembe isn't the only dinosaur that is said, or prehistoric animal that is said to inhabit Lake Tele and the Congo area. There is also a pterosaur-like animal that is said to live around there. People have claimed they've been swooped and attacked. I think somebody's even been admitted to hospital from a bill going through them, allegedly. There's that, and there's also a triceratops-like animal that is said to exist in there as well. So when that starts happening, it kind of gets a bit overboard, but who knows? Again, 80% of that jungle hasn't been explored, so there is still lots of animals living in there yet to be discovered. And there will be big animals that haven't been described in there, absolutely. There are still large animals being discovered now. Only a few years ago, there was a new species of snubbed-nosed monkey found in Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. There's new species of, I think cetacean, like a beaked whale was only discovered, and this thing's 40 feet long, mind you, only discovered a few years ago. And there's also a thing called the Lazarus taxon. Cool name. And the Lazarus taxon means an animal that has been lost in fossil history for a long time, only to be rediscovered again a long time later, still alive and breathing. Like the coelacanth, which is a 5 foot long fish, and this thing looks prehistoric, and it was said to be extinct 65 million years ago, until one was dredged up off the coast of Africa in like the 30s, alive and well. And then another one was discovered in a fish market in Southeast Asia, fish market. And now these things are well documented. There's populations that have been documented. And that is a perfect example of the Lazarus taxon. So is the Mokele Mbembe a Lazarus taxon? Or is it a undescribed animal that looks like a sauropod dinosaur through the process of convergent evolution? A convergent evolution is where animals have evolved in completely separate branches of evolution, but still look and have traits that are very similar. Perfect example is, sharks and dolphins. Although dolphins, their caudal fin, which is their tail fin, look different, they still have a general similarity in their anatomy. Birds and bats. Birds and bats aren't related at all, yet they still have anatomically very similar body types. It's got wings, it can fly. So that is convergent evolution. And that's what I believe has happened with Mokele Mbembe. I believe an animal has evolved to reach high places where other animals can't compete with them for food, hence the long neck, and also the powerful tail because it's semi-aquatic. That is my thought on Mokele Mbembe, and I do love cryptozoology. I'm fascinated in it, whether it be an animal that you downright know can't exist, and you're a bit like, I don't see that happening, to animals that you can see might exist but have a good explanation for their existence. And I think that is a good example of Mokele Mbembe. Is it a dinosaur? I don't think so. Is it an animal? Maybe. But if it was an animal, it would be a large, undescribed mammal. So, thanks for listening to my Mokele Mbembe episode. I've had this in my mind for a long time, and I've wanted to talk about it because it is fascinating and most people don't know it existed. Next episode, I probably won't do about cryptozoology. I'll be doing about something else mysterious and cool. Of course it's going to be cool and mysterious. But I will revisit more cryptozoological subjects because it is fascinating and I think you guys would like to hear more about it. So next week's episode will come out, I'm going to aim for early on in the week. So maybe this time next week, Monday or Tuesday, give you a week to listen to it before you're partying hard on the weekends. Nobody listens to podcasts on the weekends because they're out partying. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on episode 2 of Thorn's Jungle. Cheers, everyone. You.